I couldn't believe what was happening. It was my birthday, a day I had looked forward to for months. But instead of getting the usual warm greetings, gifts, and birthday wishes, I was standing in front of my boss, Mr. Williams, in complete shock. He was firing me. On my birthday. The nerve of it. I had been working at Allstate Marketing for over 3 years, and I had always given my best to the job. But today, instead of celebrating another year of hard work, I was being told I was being let go. And what was worse, he told me it was because of budget cuts. But to make it even worse, the person who would be replacing me was the same new girl I had spent the last 3 months training. Her name was Emma, a fresh-faced, eager college graduate who had only joined the company a few months ago. At first, I'd thought of her as a sweet kid who just needed some guidance. But now, standing there, I realized what this was. Williams had been grooming her to take my spot, and he did it in the most cruel way possible by making me train her, teaching her everything I knew, only for her to take my job while I stood there, helpless and betrayed. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Is this a joke? It's my birthday, Mr. Williams. You can't just fire me like this. I've been loyal to this company." His expression was cold. "I'm sorry, Jennifer, but it's final. We have to make some tough decisions, and unfortunately, your position has been affected." And just like that, it hit me. I was done, fired. Without warning, without a chance to prove myself. I tried to reason with him, to tell him how unfair this was, but he wouldn't budge. It wasn't until I saw Emma standing in the doorway, looking almost guilty but not saying a word, that I realized what had truly happened. "Emma," I whispered, unable to hold back the bitterness in my voice. "You knew about this, didn't you?" She didn't reply, but the look on her face said everything. The shock, the guilt, the confusion, it was all there, but she didn't speak up, she didn't defend me. She didn't say a single thing. I walked out of that office feeling like I had just been betrayed by everyone I trusted. But as I stood there, waiting for the elevator to take me down to the lobby, something inside me clicked. No one, not even Mr. Williams or Emma, was going to get away with this. They had taken my job, my dignity, and my birthday, but they hadn't taken my spirit. I had one chance to make this right, and I was going to make them regret it. The elevator doors closed, but instead of the usual descent, my mind was already working, formulating a plan. I wouldn't just let this go. No, I was going to make sure Mr. Williams, and especially Emma, felt the weight of their betrayal. They had no idea what was coming. Let's rewind a bit, shall we? 3 months ago, everything had seemed fine. I had been working at Allstate Marketing for over 3 years, and I was one of their top employees. I was comfortable in my role and proud of the work I had done. My team had consistently exceeded targets, and I had built strong relationships with clients. Life was good. That's when Emma walked into the picture. She was fresh out of college, bright-eyed, with big dreams of making it big in the marketing world. I was assigned to be her mentor. I remember when Mr. Williams called me into his office to break the news. "I need you to train Emma. She'll be taking over a few of your responsibilities, but don't worry, she's a quick learner." I had no problem with that. I loved mentoring, and I knew that passing on my knowledge would only help the company in the long run. Emma seemed eager, enthusiastic, and ready to learn. But as the weeks went by, I began to notice something strange. Mr. Williams started to give Emma more and more responsibility, while I was slowly sidelined. Little tasks that I used to handle were being handed over to her, and despite my best efforts to focus on my work, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pushed out. The day she took over my responsibilities without so much as a warning was the day I realized something wasn't right. She was working late hours with Mr. Williams, and whenever I asked what was going on, I was given vague answers. "Just some new ideas we're trying out," Mr. Williams would say, brushing me off. It wasn't until the day of my firing that the pieces finally clicked into place. They had been planning this for a while. They had set me up to train Emma, to teach her everything I knew so she could replace me. It was a cold, calculated move, and they had played me like a fool. But I wasn't going to let it slide. Not now, not ever. As I walked away from that building, head down, tears stinging my eyes, I promised myself one thing. I would get my revenge. I would make sure they knew exactly how it felt to betray someone who had always been loyal, someone who had worked their hardest for the company. And I would start right now. As I sat in my car, staring at the building that had been my home for 3 years, I couldn't help but smile. It was over. But for Mr. Williams and Emma, the real game was just beginning. The drive home was a blur. I couldn't stop replaying the events in my head, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. How had Mr. Williams, the man I'd always respected, been so cold? How had Emma, the person I had mentored and helped, been so willing to betray me without a second thought? I parked my car in the driveway, still in a daze, and stared at my phone. The birthday messages were starting to roll in now, friends, family, acquaintances all wishing me a happy birthday. But the warmth I once felt on this day was gone. My birthday had been stolen from me and it felt like a cruel joke. But as I sat there, my phone vibrating with yet another message, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life wallowing in self-pity. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I had to do something. I had to make them regret this. It took me a few days to get my mind together and figure out what my next move would be. I couldn't just charge into their office and start yelling at them. That wouldn't solve anything. No, I needed a more strategic approach. I needed to hit them where it hurt the most, their wallets, their reputation, and their sense of control. And I needed to be patient. Revenge wasn't something you could rush. It had to be calculated, planned, and executed perfectly. I spent the next few days carefully planning my move. I reached out to some old contacts in the marketing industry, people who knew the ins and outs of the business. I wasn't going to let Mr. Williams and Emma think they could just replace me and forget about the impact I had on the company. I had trained half of the team, after all. I had helped build the client relationships that had kept Allstate marketing afloat. My first step was to gather information. I needed to know everything about Emma's work, what projects she was handling, who she was meeting with, what strategies she was implementing. I started by contacting a few colleagues who were still at the company, people who were loyal to me, even if they couldn't speak out about the firing. It didn't take long for me to start getting the information I needed. What I found was even more frustrating than I had imagined. Not only was Emma taking on the tasks that I had once done, but she was also making rookie mistakes. Her presentations to clients were lacking in detail. Her emails were disorganized, and her ideas were basic at best. I had trained her well, but clearly she wasn't ready to handle the responsibility I had carried for so long. I kept my cool, though. I wasn't going to do anything rash. Instead, I quietly watched from the sidelines as Emma fumbled through her new role. And I made sure to stay in contact with my old colleagues, getting updates on how she was performing, how Mr. Williams was reacting to the pressure. It was only a matter of time before things started to unravel. Meanwhile, I began working on my own future. I wasn't going to be out of a job forever. I had too much experience, too many connections, and too much knowledge to just disappear. I updated my resume, reached out to old contacts, and started applying for new positions. But I wasn't in a hurry. I was playing the long game. I knew that if I was patient enough, the perfect opportunity would come along. And then it happened. I got a call from an old friend of mine, Robert. He had been a former client of Allstate Marketing, but after I left, he had moved on to a rival company. He had been watching the news about the company's struggles, and he had heard about the firing of a senior employee, me. He called to check in and see how I was doing. "I've been hearing things about Allstate," Robert said. "From what I hear, things aren't going so great. Emma's in over her head, and Mr. Williams is under a lot of pressure. If you want, I could help you land a job with us." It was the break I needed. Robert's company was growing, and they needed someone with my skills. This was my chance to get back on my feet, to start fresh, and to show the world that I wasn't done yet. But it also gave me an idea for my next move, the one that would really make Mr. Williams and Emma regret what they had done. I thanked Robert and told him I'd think about it, but in reality I had already made up my mind. I wasn't just going to take a job and move on. I was going to use this opportunity to set things in motion. I was going to get revenge, and I was going to do it by taking everything they held dear. The next few weeks were critical. I continued to monitor Emma's performance, gathering as much information as I could. But I also started working behind the scenes to sabotage her without her knowing it. I knew the company's systems inside and out, and I began to leave little traces of mistakes for her to find. I'd leave ambiguous notes in her inbox, things that would throw her off track. I'd accidentally change the deadlines for her projects, causing confusion among the team. I wasn't being malicious, but I knew that with her lack of experience, she would struggle to catch on. Meanwhile, I kept up with my job search, but every time I heard about Emma messing up, I felt a small victory. I wasn't just watching her fail, I was making it happen. It wasn't long before Emma started showing signs of stress. She was working late hours, losing sleep, and making even more mistakes than usual. It didn't take long for Mr. Williams to start noticing. Then, one day, everything came crashing down. I was sitting in my living room, scrolling through my phone when I saw a notification from a friend still working at Allstate. It read, "Emergency meeting tomorrow. Something big is happening. You need to hear this." My heart raced. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew one thing for sure: things were about to get interesting. What did Mr. Williams have up his sleeve? Was he finally realizing how bad things were? Or was Emma about to face the consequences of all the mistakes I had been leaving behind? Either way, I knew I would be there to watch it unfold. But as I sat there, waiting for the next chapter to unfold, I couldn't help but smile. The storm was coming, and I was ready to watch it tear them apart. The day of the emergency meeting arrived. I was sitting at home watching the time tick by, feeling the excitement build in my chest. I had no idea what Mr. Williams and Emma were going to discuss in that meeting, but I knew it was going to be something big. I had been working quietly behind the scenes, leaving my marks, watching Emma flounder under pressure, and I had a feeling the consequences were about to catch up to her. I was watching my phone closely, waiting for an update. I knew it wouldn't take long before I heard something. And then, the message came. It was from my old colleague, Jason, who was still working at Allstate. "Emergency meeting didn't go well. Emma was grilled in front of everyone. Mr. Williams is furious. You might want to brace yourself for what happens next." I could hardly contain my excitement. This was it. My plan was working. Mr. Williams was finally starting to see what I had seen all along: Emma wasn't cut out for the job. And now, it seemed like the pressure was about to break. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. My phone buzzed again, and I saw that Jason had sent another message. "Emma's in real trouble now. They're blaming her for a big client deal falling through. Mr. Williams is on the warpath. I don't think she's going to last much longer." I had to suppress a grin. This was exactly what I had been hoping for. Emma was falling apart under the weight of her new responsibilities, and I had done everything in my power to ensure it happened. She had no idea how hard I had worked to make sure her mistakes piled up, how I had used the knowledge of the company's systems to my advantage. The more she struggled, the more her downfall seemed inevitable. But I knew I had to be patient. There was more to this than just Emma's failure. My revenge wasn't complete yet. I wanted to see her not only fail, but lose everything: her position, her pride, and the trust of Mr. Williams. I had to make sure she realized how she had betrayed me, and I wanted Mr. Williams to see how he had mishandled the entire situation. A few hours later, I got the confirmation I needed. Jason messaged me again, this time with the full details of what had gone down in the meeting. Mr. Williams told everyone that Emma was the cause of the failed client deal. He said that she messed up big time on the pitch, and the client walked away. He's questioning whether he can keep her around. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I could already picture the look on Emma's face when she realized the full extent of her mistakes. She thought she could easily replace me and slide into my position, but now she was facing the consequences of her incompetence. I wasn't there to watch it happen, but in my mind, I was savoring the moment. But as much as I reveled in her downfall, I knew I wasn't done yet. There was still one final step in my plan. I had to ensure that Mr. Williams didn't just let Emma slip through the cracks. I needed him to realize how much of a mistake he had made by firing me and putting Emma in charge. He had chosen her over me, but now I had a chance to show him how wrong he was. The next morning, I dressed in my best suit and headed to Robert's office. I had made the decision to accept his offer. I was going to join his company and start fresh, but not before I made my final move. I wasn't just going to leave quietly. I was going to make sure Mr. Williams knew that I was the one who had kept that company afloat all these years, not Emma. As I walked into Robert's office, I felt a surge of confidence. This was my moment. I was no longer the disgruntled ex-employee sitting at home waiting for something to happen. I was about to take control of my future. Robert greeted me warmly as I stepped inside. "Jennifer, good to see you. You're looking sharp. Ready to start the next chapter?" I nodded. "Definitely, but before we get into that, I have one more thing I need to do." Robert raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I need to make sure that Allstate Marketing knows exactly what they lost," I said, a determined look in my eyes. "I'm going to make sure Mr. Williams regrets firing me. I've got a plan, and I'm going to execute it perfectly." I could see the curiosity in Robert's face, but he didn't question me further. "Well, whatever you've got in mind, I'm with you. Let me know how I can help." I spent the next few hours preparing for my final move. I knew I had to be subtle, but effective. The plan was simple. I would leak the details of Emma's incompetence and the failed client deal to the industry press. It wouldn't take much. A few anonymous tips, some carefully placed details, and the story would spread like wildfire. If Mr. Williams thought Emma was the future of the company, this would be the thing that made him realize just how wrong he was. I didn't waste any time. I reached out to a few journalists I knew from my time in the industry and made sure the story was picked up. I fed them the information, making sure it looked like a simple case of an employee's poor performance ruining a big opportunity for the company. I didn't make it look personal. I didn't have to. The truth was all I needed. And soon enough, the story broke. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, Allstate Marketing was being talked about all over the industry. Emma's name was front and center, and the story was being picked apart by competitors, former clients, and disgruntled employees. It was exactly what I had hoped for. The once promising new hire was now a liability. And Mr. Williams? He had no idea who was behind it. I sat back in my chair and took a deep breath. The revenge I had been planning for months was finally coming to fruition. Emma was no longer just facing the pressure of a failed client deal. She was now the subject of public scrutiny, and her reputation was on the line. But as satisfying as it was to see her falter, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would Mr. Williams realize how badly he had messed up? Would Emma crack under the pressure, or would she somehow survive this storm? And most importantly, would they ever find out that I was the one who orchestrated it all? As the day went on, I could feel the excitement building inside me. This was only the beginning. There was still so much more to come, and I was ready to watch it all unfold. The aftermath of the leak was everything I had hoped for and more. Within hours of the story breaking, Allstate marketing was in full crisis mode. Williams was scrambling, trying to manage the fallout from the press, while Emma's name was plastered all over every major industry news outlet. The poor girl didn't stand a chance. But this wasn't just about watching her fall. It was about making sure Mr. Williams realized the magnitude of his mistake, and that's exactly what happened. The first phone call I received after the story hit was from Robert. I could hear the excitement in his voice. "Jennifer, I've been following the news. This is huge. I'm telling you, Allstate is going to be in damage control for months." I couldn't help but smile. "I know. This is just the beginning. They've got no idea what's coming next." But as much as I was enjoying the chaos, there was a small part of me that felt conflicted. Was this really what I wanted? To see someone, especially Emma, go down in flames just because she had taken my place? She had been naive, sure, but had she really deserved this? Did I deserve to be the one to make her pay for her mistakes? I pushed those thoughts aside. No, Emma had betrayed me, and so had Mr. Williams. They had taken everything from me, and I wasn't about to let them walk away unscathed. This was about more than just me. It was about making sure that people like them understood the consequences of treating others so poorly. As the days passed, the tension at Allstate Marketing only grew. The company was now under intense scrutiny from the press, and Emma had become the face of failure. Williams was doing his best to deflect blame, but everyone knew the truth. They had been too quick to promote someone who wasn't ready, and now they were paying the price. I watched from the sidelines, enjoying every moment of it. But then, one afternoon, I received a call that changed everything. It was from an unfamiliar number, and at first, I hesitated to answer. But when I saw that it was a call from Allstate's HR department, I felt my heart race. What did they want now? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello? Miss Jennifer, this is Sarah from Allstate Marketing. We're aware of the situation that has unfolded, and we'd like to discuss it with you." I couldn't believe it. They were actually calling me? After everything that had happened? For a split second, I thought about hanging up, but something inside me told me I needed to hear them out. "Go ahead," I said, my voice cool and collected. "We'd like to offer you a settlement, a chance to come back to the company. We understand you were wronged, and we'd like to make things right." I nearly dropped the phone. This was not what I had expected. After everything that had happened, they wanted me to come back, the company that had fired me on my birthday, the same company that had replaced me with the very person I had trained. Were they out of their minds? I kept my voice steady, despite the shock I felt. "Why would I want to come back to a company that treated me the way you did?" There was a pause on the other end. "We understand your anger, Miss Jennifer. But the truth is, we're in a crisis. We need someone with your experience, your knowledge, and your connections to help us rebuild our reputation. The leak, the mistakes, the failed deals, it's all come to a head. We need you." I let out a breath, trying to process everything. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Williams, Emma, and the entire company were begging for my help, and they were offering me a chance to come back on my terms. They were essentially admitting that they had made a huge mistake. But I wasn't ready to make any decisions just yet. Not when the taste of revenge was still so sweet. "I'll think about it," I said, hanging up the phone before I could let my emotions get the best of me. I sat there for a few moments, lost in thought. They needed me. They had no choice. The company was falling apart without me. But here's the thing. I didn't need them. I had made my point. I had orchestrated one of the biggest blows to their reputation, and now they were begging for my return. It felt powerful, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't how I wanted to end things. I called Robert, needing someone to talk to. They offered me a settlement, I said, my voice full of disbelief. They want me to come back. Robert was quiet for a moment before speaking. I don't know, Jennifer. After everything they've done to you, do you really want to go back? I mean, look at what they did to you. They took your job. They betrayed you. And now they want you to fix everything? He was right. But the thought of walking away from Allstate completely felt incomplete. They had taken my birthday, my career, my dignity. But in return, I had taken their reputation, their stability, and their sense of control. They had to know that they couldn't just walk all over me and get away with it. And now they wanted me to help them? It was almost too tempting to ignore. But as I sat there, looking out the window, I realized something. I didn't need them. I didn't need to go back. My revenge had been completed. I had shown them what it felt like to lose everything. I had made them understand the consequences of their actions. And now it was time to move on. So I made a decision. I wouldn't go back to Allstate Marketing. Instead, I would continue down my own path in a new company with new opportunities. I wasn't going to let them win. They thought they could fire me, replace me, and push me out. But they had underestimated me. They had underestimated how far I was willing to go for justice. I picked up the phone, dialed Robert's number again, and smiled as I said, "I'm ready. Let's get started." And just like that, I closed the chapter on Allstate Marketing. Emma, Mr. Williams, and the company itself would never forget the lesson I had taught them. The revenge wasn't about what I had gained. It was about showing them that no one, no matter how powerful, could get away with betraying someone who had worked as hard as I had. I had won, and they had lost.